Okay. Hello, everyone. We just want to let you know right off the bat that this event is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, you are more than welcome to turn off your camera, mute yourself, and all that good stuff. But we do want to let you know that right now. This is a safe space regardless. We want to create a fun environment for everyone. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. I love the turnout already, and I'm really excited to get into it. And with that, I'll pass it over to Camilo.
All right, welcome everyone. We're so excited to be here. We're so excited to collaborate with the Women's Center. My name is Camilo. I'm the art gallery director at student director at SF State. And we're gonna start by introducing our panelists today. So I'm gonna be sharing my screen. Just one moment. All right. Just make sure. Okay, can everyone see it? Yeah, okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, so today we've invited four really amazing artists, and we're gonna be talking about how their their identity and their art connect, and what that means for each of them. And they're all working in different mediums in art. They're doing really wonderful things out there in this world. So let's go ahead and start introducing them. So we're gonna start with Leticia Hernandez. She is a writer, artist, and racial justice educator at San Francisco State University. She was actually my professor last semester. One of the best classes I've taken. You should take a class with her. She's amazing. Here you can see one of her installations, which is called Fight of the Ancestors. Profe, as I call her, is also a poet. So we're gonna be listening to her poetry. We have a video that is about 1 minute long. So let's take a look.
Look for closets spilling out of windows, laundry bursting from bags, truck beds carrying more things, more bodies than can fit, working arms moving faster than they should, all signposts to find your way home. And don't bring shells unless you leave pennies for Yamaya. Don't bring songs until you sing one for La Virgen de la Caridad. As you swing, I sew songs for you. Esta mariposa vuela, vuela, vuela. I imagine as a girl, you'll look at me with his eyes, laugh loud when you play with swords. Baila con el viento, se ríe del guerrero. As a boy, you'll smile with my eyes. Pedacito de mi piel, de mi corazón. Tell me boys can be butterflies too.
Amazing. And I'm just gonna provide some more information about Leticia. So she's an award-winning interdisciplinary bilingual writer, artist, and racial justice educator. She's the first generation US-born daughter of Salvadorian immigrants. She is the author of Mucha Muchacha, Too Much Girl, and Alejandria Fights Back, La Lucha de Alejandria. She's co-editor of the Wandering Song, Central American Writing in the United States. She has convened and collaborated with Salvadorian Central American artists and writers, both nationally and internationally. And for over 2 decades, she has lived, taught, created, and protested in the Mission District of San Francisco. She teaches in Latino Studies at San Francisco State University. We're so excited to have you here, Profe.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to our next speaker, we have Andrea Uribe. So she is a photographer and brain and behavioral scientist. So here you can see some of her amazing photographs. So I'm gonna provide a little more information about Andrea. She is a Colombian photographer and current student of brain and behavioral sciences at Purdue University. She is interested in building a bridge of communication between people with mental disorders, such as autism and the world. Her work focuses on the physical interaction between the audience and the piece, finding a way in which the viewer is aware of other things besides just sight. Her interest for art, sorry, we could mute uh, that would be great. Her interest for art and behavior intersect to show the unseen, things we oversee, things that we are visible only if we pay attention for our surroundings. The magic of mental health and the power different art forms when communicating. Her research focuses on finding a way to show people that mental health is not a problem, rather a solution and an opportunity to grow and be more compassionate with one another. So we're so excited to have you here, Andrea. Andrea is also a lifelong friend of mine, and we went to school together, so I'm so excited to have her here too. Gracias, Andre. Okay. Now, I'm gonna introduce Yeye Suarez, a performance artist, educator, and social worker. So for over a decade, Yeye Suarez spent her time doing cultural exchange and performing arts education locally, nationally, and internationally with children and youth in disenfranchised communities. Since 2013, Yeye redefined her concept of creative work by choosing a spiritual practice, learning about psychosocial development, and providing community mental health services with Latin American identified youth and families. Through song, storytelling, poetry, theater, music, and movement, Yeye invites community to co-create and process experiences while deepening in understanding of life and identity and collective healing. So now we're gonna see a video where we're gonna learn more about Yeye.
Good evening, listeners. Thanks for tuning in. Tonight, we're lucky to have in studio with us a group of wonderful musicians who make up JJ, a theater, music, dance, and storytelling project that uses movements and rhythms from the African diaspora in Latin America and the Caribbean to preserve the people's history, promote healing, and speak on issues affecting the community. They're led by artist and educator Joanna Suarez, aka JJ.
There's a lot of elements that go into your band, but it's not just music that you guys perform. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes your performances so unique?
Well, because I was a dancer and I performed so much theater in my life, I really like to combine everything together. I believe that the arts are all one, just as we are all one. So I try to, bring everything together: theater, dance, visual art.
Okay, so that's some of the work of JJ. It's so nice to have another fellow Colombian here. And welcome, JJ. Thanks for being with us. And now moving on to our final panelist. We have Yula Costa, a music producer and multidisciplinary artist. She is an SFSU Cinema graduate, Brazilian-born. Yula Costa is a multifaceted artist. While at SFSU, she hosted a radio show, assigned on-campus events by working at ASI, and identified her passion for concert photography at the Depot, shooting student performances. As a photographer, music producer, and DJ, she has been deeply involved in the music scene in the Bay Area since graduation. She has worked as a photographer for nightclubs, as a production assistant on film sets, and more recently, begun producing music and DJing events with LP, Job's Femme House, and SF Music Collective Gold Block. So, welcome, Yula. We're also very excited to have you. Yeah, so that's it. These are the artists we have, and now I'm gonna pass it on to Haley, who will be facilitating the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Camilo, for those wonderful introductions, and thank you so much to our panelists for joining us today. I'm very excited to speak with you all, and I'm so excited that we were able to gather a group of very powerful and very passionate women who produce great work and amazing art. So thank you for joining us today. To get into the Q&A, I would like to ask a question that is applicable to everyone in the room that we can all sit with for a second, but I'd like to ask, when have you expressed yourself through your art medium and felt the most like yourself?
I can start if you want. So my thesis, like my senior show at CCA, so I was a photography major, but I really wasn't in the putting a picture on the wall kind of person. I wanted to use photography like beyond just like a picture on the wall. Also a very interesting like math and like all the patterns and different things that are in nature and math, and I want to like mix that with photography. So I actually did an installation where you like it was divided in like two spaces. The first space had like very basic, clean black and white pictures on the wall, but then the second half of the installation, it was like if you could emerge inside one of those pictures, but it was all like neon black and white. You couldn't see each other. It was like complete opposite of what was outside. And I used this because I felt like sometimes in school, like teachers wanted me to be the kind of not basic, but like the idea of like pictures on the wall kind of idea. And every time I was like doing something beyond that, there were like a lot of questions like, okay, but why? But why? But why? And it was hard for me to answer that why. So being able to put an installation and show them what I was trying to do rather than explaining them what I was thinking, that was like I felt like I could really express myself really well, and I really like that, like being able to pull that off. That was very nice.
Thank
Well,
you.
that answer inspired me a bit because I was having a trouble thinking about the question, and then your story about your installation reminded me of my first time doing an installation, and it was probably my most personal piece I've ever done. I tend to hide myself a little bit in my work, and this was recreating my father's work sort of station. He was a wallpaper hanger, and so I wrote a poem, and then I learned how to screen print, and I screen print the poem onto a drop cloth, which is what he would throw on the floor to put his ladder on and the buckets, right? And so I mean, this was really scary because it was my first time really like fully launching into and making an installation, and I managed to make it pretty interactive. And I mean, I won't go into every single detail of it, but it was based in a poem, which is my foundational discipline. But I was able to create an interactive, a personal story. It had music. It had like a record player where you could play Ruben Blades' Los Desaparecidos, Buscando America album. There was a Polaroid, so people could take pictures. I was talking about memory. So there were a lot of components, and then I performed for the opening. So it was kind of like all the parts. So very much in tune with that idea of that it's all one, like Yaya said.
Thank you for that answer.
I guess I'll go next. So for me, I think the most liberating part of what I'm doing, I feel the most creative. It's definitely when I'm playing a concert, just because that's something that in building up my career was something that I experienced as part of the audience so many times. And so when I'm playing a show, more specifically when I played my first festival, the Santa Cruz Music Festival, it was so kind of empowering to be in that space behind the DJ decks where to me it feels like it's my safe space. And I think music itself is liberating, and like just like any other form of art, it has the power to move people, to bring them some kind of emotion, and also to kind of make them present in the moment. And so that's always what I'm trying to give people when I'm playing, to kind of emulate the same feelings and emotions that I would like to experience in a concert. And it's very intuitive, you know, like you have to read the people that are in your audience to figure out what music you're going to play next. It's not necessarily something that you can plan ahead. So it makes you be very present in the moment, and have this connection with other people, which is what I love most about it.
Te voy, te lavo las manos. ¿Quieres más watermelon or no more?
That was my sister, actually. Now we all know Elena is eating watermelon, Angela. I think, yeah, I will go along with what Andrea said. I would say my undergraduate thesis. One of my majors was dance, because I came to this country and apparently you had to prove through a title that you knew how to dance, that it didn't matter that you actually knew how to dance, that you had to have this title, right? So I one of my majors was political, legal and economic analysis, and the other one was dance, and so I combined those two into a performance. And even from the first year, my dance advisor was, "You're not a dancer, you should change careers, you should not do this." I got a lot of pushback. I told her, I said, "Okay, watch me. You don't think I'm a dancer? Watch me," you know? And then my thesis advisor also really questioning, like, "What are you doing? Why are you collaborating with like 20 people? Like like what you're doing is not right, this and that." And then finally, being able to do a performance that I always have been really into, breaking that audience and performance kind of barrier and really engaging the audience into what's happening. And so at the time I was working at a school working with immigrant youth, and being able to have them, have my artist friends work collaboratively in the performance, and then have my youth be in the performance, and talk about I use folklore, traditional dances for a long time, to be able to talk about Latin America, and that we're not all the same, that like all these different concepts, but really talking about colonization, and having a colonized mind and a colonized body, and what that was like to be as an immigrant here, right? And so when the whole thing was done, my advisor was like, "Oh, it would be nice to collaborate after you graduate." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, okay. I am not gonna do that." But yeah, just like really being able to just really felt completely free, being able to present. Like, I think Andrea said it really well. I'm a storyteller, so I get long-winded. She just said it, like being able to say what I cannot say in words, just show it.
Thank you for that. And that's the beautiful thing, I mean, that I think you all named in your stories, is how empowering art really can be, and how liberating it is to be able to take different intersections of your identity and express that in a way where you feel most comfortable. So Andrea, this is a question for you, but how often do you find that behavior and art intersect with each other?
Like really easy, like always. So when like I was thinking about this question, I thought about it like literally the brain. So like when we look at the brain, a little maybe boring science lecture, but the brain has like 4 lobes, as like most of us might know. If not, it's okay. And each lobe of the brain is in charge of like a very specific thing. So like the frontal lobe is like motor control and problem solving, and it's like in charge of speech. Then the parietal lobe, it's like involved with like touch and perception. The occipital lobe, it's everything that has to do with the sight. And then the temporal lobe, it's everything that has to do with language and like memory and like listening. And then in the temporal lobe, there's like a really small part that it's the amygdala. And this is exactly what, like, it's in charge of the emotions. So as we can see, like the brain, like art is everywhere in the brain. It's not like there's one specific part that deals with art, since like art can be like visual, art can be performative, art, like there's a lot of ways in which we can express ourselves through art. So all of these different ways of expressing ourselves like literally like stimulate all of our brain. So when we're thinking about how behavior like and art are related, I would say that and like based on what I like said previously, it really helps people like explore their emotions through art. It like develops self-awareness, sorry. It is very useful like with people of all ages. When you're going, like for example, kids, they are starting to learn what a word is and the concept of language, but they are really good at art and expressing themselves through art, through colors. They really do know what's going on when it comes to art and expressing and dancing. So it's like a really good way to really express things we really can't say with words. Sometimes for me, especially, it's really hard to say when I'm angry or when I'm sad, like talk to someone. For me, it kind of like it's hard sometimes, but through art, I feel like it's a different way of communication. And it's, I feel like when we're talking, sometimes we might think that, oh, whatever we say is going to be used against us. But when we're using art, we don't have that feeling because we express like ourselves from like really who we are without worrying, oh, if I say this, then they're going to say whatever. We don't have, I feel like we don't have that problem with art. For example, like one specific case, people with schizophrenia use art therapy a lot. Therapies for them is they would ask them to like literally illustrate however they can, however they want. Also, like that's something else. Anyone can be an artist. Absolutely anyone can be an artist. Anyone can create anything. So they would ask these people to draw their illusions or express their illusions however they wanted. And that's like a starting point for a conversation. Like art really help us create that starting point for growth, for behavior and how we express ourselves. So I feel like it's a different way of communication that I would say it's more universal than actual words.
Thank you, especially for the science aspect of it. That's not something that a lot of people were expecting, I think, coming into this today. So thank you for providing that.
Sorry, it's very scientific.
No, it's interesting. It's so interesting. So thank you. And yeah, it definitely makes sense how, and that's something like I can relate to too, how art just feels like instinctual as humans. Like we just long to create and want to contribute something and want to express ourselves and tell a story. So yeah, thank you for putting that into scientific terms.
Sure.
But to pass it over to Professor Hernandez, how do you feel that or how do you teach your students kind of that same idea, but in the aspect of mental health? Like how are art and mental health connected?
Well, I focus a lot on testimonial literature. That's one of my areas of academic expertise. I don't identify or consider myself an academic, although I am, teaching in an academic institution, obviously, but I very intentionally returned to the academy because of San Francisco State's history as a, in the movement of social change and in the department, the College of Ethnic Studies. And so, but when I was trying to be an academic for a minute, I did study a lot of testimonio, both in Latin America and also just in a multicultural context, because of the idea that, it decolonizes authorship, it creates accessibility, and also because of the idea of of that, you know, everyone can do their own work and everyone can save themselves and heal themselves. And that's a philosophy that runs through across a lot of disciplines, whether it be racial equity, yeah, pedagogy that, you know, has been written about extensively, especially recently, and there's a lot of training going on in school districts to try to decolonize this very white supremacist at the root institution. And so basically this idea runs through my classes despite the different focus, right, which is that the learning is in the community and in the story, right? Paulo Freire, the sort of very historic educator, talked about, you know, the cultural assets that the oppressed, or, you know, those not in power have and bring into a classroom, and that can be liberatory sources of liberation. So I start with introducing my praxis, my approach to education, that I'm not going to stand in the front of the room and give them things to memorize that they're going to forget in a few years, but that I'm really invested in them taking ownership of their liberation, their critical thinking abilities, their learning, and that we're all learning together. And so I'm going to learn from them as much as they're going to learn from me. And an example of that is some of the reading in my gender course is directly recommendations from previous students. They saw a gap or they wanted more of something, and then I said, cool, I'll, you know, do you have a suggestion? And they did, and some of those readings have become central in that course. For example, Katie Acosta's work on the Latinx families, and, you know, and how they deal with sorry, I was distracted for a minute, deal with sexuality and respond to their queer children, or Alan Pelaez Lopez, who's doing some really important work. So, I mean, this may not directly answer your question, but I think in terms of my classes, I really emphasize the same way that I am an interdisciplinary artist, I ask them to be interdisciplinary as well. So I give them a lot of access points. So someone who might be strong, you know, in a group and needs that support will have that opportunity. Yeah, and so that also that they can pull out from the material what most interests them is what they're going to remember, right? And that's that part about the cultural aspect, right, of wanting to connect to something that they can relate to, which is a very natural instinct. And all of that then, you know, affirms, heals, explains. So in terms of mental health, you know, it's about like validating their experiences. So the single most common thing I hear from them is, why didn't I know this? Like, why didn't I know about my history? Why didn't I know about this, you know, this revolutionary moment or person or saying or story? And it's like, right, why are we the only College of Ethnic Studies in the country? So, I mean, it's a big question about mental health. So I think that the way that I contribute to it is in one, affirming and authorizing every single person in the classroom to speak, to critique, to teach. And then in terms of, you know, the art part, it's like that's the opportunity to be creative, which I try to provide in most of my classes, is a way they can process and start the healing that they need to do, because that's, once they're like, why did I know about this, then their testimonies come of their traumas, and they're relating to that. And sorry, I'm going on and on, but I don't know if that made sense, but I'll stop.
Thank you for that. Art's definitely, I feel like, the easiest way that anyone can liberate themselves and find that community, because there's so many different subgenres of these different mediums that we find. So there's really something out there for everyone. And if there's not, people are always breaking those boundaries and finding that community for themselves and for others. So thank you for doing that work on campus and uplifting students, because yeah, mental health is definitely super important for anybody on our campus. And especially now in the pandemic, people are really trying to find that community, whether virtually or from a distance, through art. So thank you. But on like the same wavelength of self-expression, Eula, this is a question for you. Electronic music in general, or like the entire scene of electronic music is a very, at least from what I've heard, is a very like liberating experience, and a very liberating environment for a lot of people. So I just wanted to ask, how do you feel like you create that environment, as someone who creates electronic music and is part of that scene?
Have a question. I think, well, what has worked for me so far, once I figured out that I did want to potentially make music or play music or just, be in the music industry, I just kind of started throwing myself out there to every possible, opportunity that I could grab. Every artist that came to San Francisco that I wanted to shoot, I would reach out to them. Publications that could potentially let me do photography work and get me into places for free, I would do that. And so with that, I would meet a lot of people. Most of the, and the more that I did it, the more I would see the same people. And every time, most of the time when I'm shooting a concert in San Francisco, it would be me and a lot of male photographers. Once in a while I would see another girl, and when I did, I would always make sure to talk to them, to get to know them, exchange our work and things like that. And so I think the way that I contribute to it is I'm always trying to lift up the people that are around me, even if I just see them at one event and never again. I'm always trying to engage with the work that they're doing. How can I support it? And music has been merging a lot with visual art too. A lot of the concerts that I play or that I go to, there's usually what we call a VJ, which is the visual DJ, who is doing all the visuals behind the scenes. And it's really cool to experience that and to see those worlds merge. And so I think, I think that's the way that I can contribute to it, just lifting the people that are around me, exchanging my work, and engaging with their work as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something that's applicable to all environments, I think, especially like educationally and on our campus. It's important to uplift each other and like let everyone express what they're learning and what they're creating at the same time in a free space. JJ, I guess like, do you feel like you can relate to that in the way of being a performer and having to uplift others and uplift an audience? How do you, I guess, preserve your own identity and preserve your own energy as you're doing that?
Well, I did it for many years, from 5 years old until 2015, and then I was done. So it was, there was a moment where it was, so when I was doing it as performing in the community and all of that, it definitely took a lot of preparation, I don't think at the time I realized that, like, my own, I always rationalized like my trauma and like my things, and just kind of like used art as a medium of healing. Really, that was my platform, right? Like art as a medium of healing and connection to our ancestry. And you know it worked, right, for those years. And then I realized that, in order to also, I guess what was happening then was that the way that audiences were receiving our music was really healing. But there was a moment where I realized that my energy was depleting, and that was in 2015. And that's when I told my band with, in a meeting, and they were heartbroken that we needed to stop. And so, like, this question kind of like, took me back to that moment where I told them, I need a moment to go in. I realized my self-esteem had been built through process and metals and different things since I was very young. And so in order to preserve that, and in order to continue to do the art, to address your question, I really I stopped performing, and I kind of, like Camilo mentioned, just really redefined what art was for me, and what it was how I could continue to provide a space for healing for others, but also for myself as well, so that I could continue to do it for the longer term. So preservation for me was going in really in for the past almost 6 years now, and be able to understand that art can be used also in different spaces, such as right now, psychotherapy. I do it, like Camilo said, also like in my spiritual practice, using art there and using it more as a how do I use arts and creativity to support folks connecting to their spiritual lives. And also in my work, how do I support folks in using arts to heal, to understand their if they, I work with a lot of young people with PTSD and severe depression and psychosis, and so being able to use art in those mediums that are not performative, that are very much about these internal processes that no one else gets to see, maybe just us that are in those spaces.
Thank you for being vulnerable with us in that answer. I really appreciate it, and I understand how it's hard to like revisit those old memories and put yourself back in that place. So thank you for that answer. I think this is something that all of our panelists can jump in on, but I'm gonna pass it back to Professor Hernandez. How do you feel that we can, I guess, reclaim our own identity through art, whether that's from a racial perspective or anything else?
Oh my goodness, just that. I'm also going to tell you how we're going to cure cancer next, okay? So, I mean, I really want that to happen. I'm not trying to joke about cancer. I'm just saying that that's a huge question. But I mean, I'm going to start, I guess, with myself. I was born, that was the first in my family to be born in the United States. And I grew up having very little family here. Most of my family was still in El Salvador, trying to maintain during the war. And so I didn't really have a frame of reference for myself as the daughter of Salvadoran immigrants. And I had to build it, find it, connect with others. I mean, I didn't do the work alone, but a big part of my work has been, as Camilo mentioned, is convening with Central American other artists, writers, elders, who are here, who are in El Salvador, but also who are here. And, just sort of telling the world about who we are. The problem of the representation and the demonization and criminalization of Salvadorans and of people of color in general. And it's not that we're special in that way, but the particular way we have been constructed by dominant narratives, most recently, the monster that just left the White House, right? It's like criminal and and just this unknown person, right? And more recently I was I had a guest in my Central American Heritage class, and a poet and community leader, Rosana Perez, and she was talking about how in the 80s, when she arrived as a refugee and former political prisoner, that they were also, politicians at that time were also calling Salvadorans criminals, right? So what the impact of being from this place of such violence and such struggle, right? And then you're here and you don't know, like your beans are different, and my beans are different, my verb conjugations are different than the majority Chicano Mexican population in Los Angeles where I grew up. It's such a long process, and I just feel so grateful to have found people and to have this has been a dream that I have sort of like developed. And so I have gotten to that sounded weird. I have been able to you have to laugh so hard to read, jeez. Learn about both, homeland, my ancestral land, and as well as, have a reflection from other people about what we've been through here. And so editing that anthology of the Wandering Song was just a huge honor to work with authors who were my heroes, and then to convene a community in a book to tell the big broad spectrum of experiences we have, because we're not trying to recreate the binaries or the sort of canons. We're trying to expand, the stories. So I feel like I'm not always answering your question directly, but anyway, that's kind of that's an example of how I've done it for myself. One other thing I do want to say that's really important when we start talking about identity, though, is that the first thing is to, you know how I was talking about authorizing yourself, is that to authorize yourself to determine what your identity is and not let anyone tell you what it is, you know, so that you don't fall into like you know, stereotypes or anything else. It's like, you know, I make a joke that whether I eat pupusas with a fork or my hand, I wake up Salvadoran every day. And it's like, just because I'm OCD and I don't want grease on my hands, but, you know, but like, it's just that idea that students often struggle with when they kind of are entering the university. Is sort of like Chuck D used to talk about like the thug student, you know, that suddenly you're like the hardest kid ever because you're in the institution, you're a first gen student. And anyway, so I think you get the picture.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm Salvadoran as well, and I definitely I know, and I definitely feel like that disconnect from my own family because I mean I wasn't born there. I'm like third generation, so I'm always like trying to or hoping that like there's some sort of art medium or some way that like those ideas and these stories and that culture can get passed down, so I can share it, you know, with my future children and with others. So. Thank
Come
you.
on, girl, I got you. Come on.
Yeah,
We'll talk
seriously,
later.
I'm like, what
We'll
classes are you teaching? Because I'm about to take one.
That's right.
But thank you. Yeah, that definitely hit very close to home. But I guess in the telling of, gosh, I'm trying to think about how to phrase my next question. But in the telling, I guess, of stories and culture and art, Andre, this is a question for you. Since you work with those who are neurodivergent, I know specifically with those who have autism, they don't express themselves necessarily verbally or in a typical way. So how, can you explain how, I guess, those ideas and that culture is communicated through photography?
Yeah. So, I mean, people with autism specifically, autism is complicated. Um, it's a very wide spectrum as well. So there is certainly some individuals that have a really hard time communicating at all with any medium. It's really hard for them. Whereas there are some individuals that it's easier for them, but they still have some other issues. So like for example, I worked as a behavioral therapist with autistic children for a year, and I had this person, this patient. She was 12 years old at the time, and her way of expressing herself was through art. She would create. She had a crazy imagination, like I've never seen so much imagination in one person. But she was like really good at it. Whenever she was feeling upset, she would create a character and she will make a story about that character. And that's how she would tell me how she was feeling. I know it's not photography, but it was like an example. When I think about photography, for example, I have a cousin, and I have a story. When he was around 5 years old, I was at his house, and he came to me and he was crying like a lot. He was playing with his friends. I asked him what it was wrong with him, and he said that he was being bullied. And I was like, "Why? What's up? What's wrong?" And I don't know. They were having 5-year-old kids conversations about something, and basically he said that he was being bullied because he thought differently. He had a different opinion of whatever they were talking about. So I did use photography to try to explain him that he wasn't wrong in that case. So I got my phone, and there was a flower at a table, and I told him to just press, just press here and take a picture of the flower. And he was like, I don't know how to do it. Just do it. However you feel, just press here, take a picture. He took a picture. Then I told him I was going to take my picture of the same flower. So I took a picture of the same flower. And then I used that example and I showed him, like, we both took the picture of the same flower. It is the same flower. Just you look at it this way and I look at it this way, but we get to the same, like, it's the same flower. So I guess photography would be like a way to show your perspective, show that there's different points of view, but like nobody's wrong. It's just like a way that you can communicate what you're seeing and how you're seeing it through like a still moment. With autism, I'm not sure how, I mean, with autism, photography will work more in the sense that they would, like we could use photography to help them communicate by pointing or by showing them or by constructing collage photographies with them. But that would really like depend on what, like at what level of autism specifically that person's at. But definitely photography, it's a bridge of communication and different points of view from one person to another, I would say.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hard to ask these questions because I almost want them to be like more specific, but like broad at the same time, because it's so easy to just branch off into different art mediums and different examples, even if that's not, I guess, the medium that you're used to working with or that you typically work with. So thank you. And I completely agree. I think that's really cool how photography is very literally, in the sense that's how we see the world, through those different points of view, but that's definitely very applicable, like in drawing and performance art and things like that. So yeah, thank you. Thinking of my next question here. I guess to shift gears a little bit, Eula, how do you, I guess, in different music genres, do you feel that that's applicable as well, that those who create, or I mean, I guess that's another, like, I mean, I've heard of like synesthesia, where like you hear music and like you see, I guess, what it feels like to you, or you see like colors that are associated with it. Have you experienced that, or do you know anyone who's experienced that before?
Me not personally. I think that's actually not a disease, but it's actually a thing that people have that's pretty rare, I guess. I have like friends of friends that I've heard about having this, but me not personally. But I will say that, like, for me, if I'm making music, or if I'm preparing to put a set together, like, I try to trust a lot of my like body instincts. So if I like feel it in my gut that, like, this feels like, butterflies in my stomach or something like that, if I can get those feelings about a song, then I know that, it feels right in a way. So not necessarily seeing colors or hearing colors and seeing words, I guess is what you said. But more trying to trust like my bodily instincts about how a certain song makes me feel, and then probably hope that that'll be the same feeling that'll give another person when I'm performing.
Thank you. This next question's for Yeye. How do you, what's an idea that you've tried to express through your performance art that you've wanted to make your audience feel?
Well, I would say maybe when, I mean, there's a lot of them, but I'll try to pick one in particular, which actually we did it at San Francisco State for Women's International Women's Day, like back in the day. And it was a piece about the women of Juarez, who to this day continue to be killed. But about 10 years ago, it was terrible. Every day they would find a woman in Juarez murdered. And so I collaborated with some incredible artists, visual artists, Mexican visual art, actually, two Mexican artists. Musician was Diana Gameros, which some of you probably know. She's an incredible activist as well. And Ersalia, she was the visual artist. And what I think we tried to do, I don't know if any of you have read the book Women at Point Zero, but I wrote a song from that book and really kind of put a piece together that included these different art mediums to really share the pain and the struggle and just the misery that these women were being put through, and also how nothing was being done about it. And so I would say that was one of the pieces where I was like, okay, I'm gonna convey it, and we're gonna do it very raw. And as if you check out the thesis video, in that video I also talked about abuse, like sexual abuse, the objectification of our bodies, and I wrapped myself in saran paper, like all of my body, and then just started ripping it, like in the middle of the performance, and kind of just really giving a representation of how our bodies are just kind of disposable, have been disposable for so many, since the inception of the world. So.
Thank you. That's extremely powerful. And that kind of transitions the conversation, I guess, from not just art and identity, but art and activism as well, which is super important because a lot of the time, especially now, there's so much going on in the world where a lot of people don't know exactly how to help or how to bring attention to it and how to educate. And art's a beautiful way of doing that. So thank you for sharing that. And Professor Hernandez, do you feel like that's something that you can add on to as well, the idea of art and activism?
Absolutely, that's all I'm about.
I
but I just have to stop for a moment and just say how excited and just elated I am about the shout out to Nawal El-Sadawi, who is an incredible feminist. She was a doctor, she's a writer, and I think I have every one of her books, but Women at Point Zero is such an important book. It's a testimonio, and I taught it when I used to teach in the Women and Gender Studies department a while back, and I'm so happy to hear that reference. And yes, in terms of the disposability of women's bodies is exactly what inspired the installation that you saw a picture of at the beginning of the presentation, which, by the way, that was a lovely presentation, Camilo. Thank you so much. It's Women at Point Zero. And so I guess someone can write it. Sorry, I have to remember I'm not teaching class, and I'm not in charge of the chats. But so my friend, my family, an incredible artist, Evelyn Orantes, and I collaborated together on the installation. And actually, Flight of the Ancestors was the name of the exhibit. It was a Day of the Dead exhibit at the Mission Cultural Center, but the name of our installation was Que no soy yo mujer, which is the Spanish translation of Sojourner Truth's Ain't I a Woman. And then I wrote a poem. Again, that's kind of how I enter into installation. I wrote a poem just connecting different stories of just the legacy of the disposability and violence against women and femicide. And the interactive part, because that's something that I'm very connect with Yeye about, is breaking the boundary between this passive audience, right, and you on the stage, but rather as a communal and a collaboration or collaborative experience. So one of the walls we left somewhat blank, and we had a lot of butterflies cut out so people could leave the name of a departed loved one or of a person on the wall, and they ended up filling it. Like, it was so powerful. It was just really beautiful how people wanted to, join this sort of the spirit of the installation was basically yes, acknowledging the violence, but also owning the transition to being an ancestor and going back into the indigenous beliefs around that, connected with a deity that is a butterfly, right? And so that connection between the power of what a butterfly symbolizes, right? And that's why we had the butterfly shaped paper. Yeah, so I mean, most of everything I do has a collaboration connected to it, or a community facing part. And so that's how I was raised with, Nuevo Canto. revolutionary music, telling me the story of the struggles of Central America. My father was a musician, so he taught me through music. So Roque Dalton's like poetry like bread, that like it's not just for me, poetry's for everyone, and is my motto. So I could go on and on forever on that question, but I'm gonna stop. Oh, I just did not give credit. It's did I say Roque Dalton is who said that poetry like bread?
Thank you. And yeah, please, if anyone could drop like the titles of these works in the chat, please do. And I've also seen a couple people giving their insight and their opinion in the chat as well. So thank you for that. Please continue. If you'd also like to unmute or raise your hand, I can see that as well. And I'd be more than happy to call on you if you want to add something to the conversation as well. So yeah, feel free to do that as well. But on the same idea of, I guess like taking ownership of our bodies and like reclaiming those ideas and things like that. How do you, I think any of you can answer this, but what are, I guess, the necessary steps within these different industries or within your medium to empower women?
I can go first. I think something that I thought about, that, you know, it's not what, you know, the main thing that's going to fix everything, but in the music industry specifically, I think that especially in the media, you know, when someone writes about, you know, the work of a woman in music, or, you know, is talking about them, there's always, you know, oh, she's a female producer, she's a female DJ, she's a female director, she's a female photographer. And so I think the first step would be to kind of just normalize the jargon and equalize the terms. You know, like we don't see people writing about male directors, male photographers, male producers, as male photographers. They're just a photographer. They're just this. And that's how I kind of try to reclaim my power too. Like, I don't think of myself as a female producer or a female photographer. I'm just a photographer. I'm just a producer. And I think the more that we encourage this behavior, I guess, the more we can open up the space, not just for women, but for everybody else. Yeah, I think that's what I would do.
Do any of the other panelists want to add on to that?
I think I definitely relate to that. I think taking spaces and roles, like in music, you mostly see composers, male, directors, male, right? And so I directed, I composed, I was like a mandaba, or like a band full of men, you know? So like taking those roles, and also I think going beyond just this one identity, that you know, I think the growth that I think I've had over the years has been that I'm not just Colombian, I'm not just a woman, I'm not just this, but I am all these things, and I am so much more than just this box that people want to put me into. And I think that in itself has been super empowering, and I think I believe has empowered other folks too, to trust that no matter what box people want to box you in, that you can be all of who you want to be and all of who you are, not having to fall into a particular label.
That's funny. That reminds me, one time I was in Washington, D.C. I go there often because there's a big Central American community there. And this man we were doing this Mujeres panel of like local artists and myself, and it was this place called the Casa de Cultura in Salvadoran Casa de Cultura in DC. And this man, you know, he was so awkward. He's had a suit and really slick hair. And I'm like, why is he here? And he was like, do you feel more mujer or more Salvadoran or something like that? And I was just like, bruh, like that's a non-starter. I didn't say bruh, but I was like, sorry, I have a teenage son, so I say bruh all the time. We bruh each other, but it's gender neutral, okay, in my house. And so, but yeah, it was just a silly question about the, what do you feel more of, for sure. But I do, for me, when I first started performing, and it was like the big thing was spoken word, and if you were performative, you got kind of put in that category, which made sense. And I also sometimes resented, as someone who has published a lot of my work. I'm like, I'm both a performer and a writer. And there became the hierarchy, but that's not the point of my story. I was often asked to be on lineups, but it felt like, oh, we need a woman, or we need a Latina. Literally one time I got a request, somebody said, oh, that Latina with the flower in her hair. Okay, so I stopped wearing flowers in my hair after that. But what I did is I started my own series, and for 10 years I gathered mujeres, so that we were not the tagline, we were the whole show. And I know that there's a lot of you that continue to do that and are doing that. And I think that's also a really critical way of supporting each other.
I like to just add very quickly from what Leticia said, and is that by you taking up that space, you're making space for others, And so if you have that little no sé qué, that extra thing that maybe someone else doesn't have, by you doing that, you are in itself making space for other women to take on those spaces.
That's definitely a great way to avoid being like tokenized, I guess you could say, because of your identity. Because that is common, especially like in entertainment, or at least like what I've noticed is that they always want like, oh, this one person or one woman to diversify our cast or diversify who we have on our team. So yeah, I love the idea of taking up space, and that's super important. So thank you for that. That's amazing. And that's another, like, going back to how we were talking about protecting your energy, like that's protecting your identity, is claiming that and saying like, this is mine, I'm here as myself, and I'm making space for other people who are like me. So yeah, that's a really beautiful idea. Thank you. I don't, have you other panelists ever felt tokenized in that way, like in your industry?
In my case, I feel like a lot of the times we're being taught like, okay, the male brain and the female brain, and males are supposed to act this way, and the brain says that males, I'm not saying they are, I'm generalizing, but they're very aggressive, and like that's what we're taught, like from the brain. I feel like if we were just, I feel like all of those ideas generate like a lot of stereotypes of how we should behave based on our gender, what's the right thing, and things like that. And I feel like if we are just like, if we take that out of the equation and just say like, that's a brain, doesn't matter if it's boy or girl, if it's male or female brain, it is a brain. And that will, I feel like, take away a lot of stereotypes if we like start doing less research on a male brain versus a female brain, and just focus on the brain, since like, who says that a female cannot do something a male can? Like, that's not, like, the brain is not something that should, I guess, give you permission to act a certain way. So if we like get that out of our research, I guess would be useful to like try to eliminate a lot of stereotypes of how we should act or how we should behave, what should we do, and what's acceptable and what's not.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely reclaiming that language, or just switching that language and stepping away from the binary idea that is often presented, like in what Eula was saying, like male director, female producer, and things like that. It can be anybody. Like, you don't have to identify as male or female. So that's definitely something that's super important. Thank you. Sorry, I'm reading the chat. I always forget to, whenever I'm like asking questions or facilitating something, I have like one eye on the chat and like one eye on everyone else. Well, Andrea, how do you feel that, because I mean, it's hard to switch language in something that's so visual, like photography. So you were saying how in photography we can present like the world as we see it through our own eyes and our own perspective, but is it possible to, I guess, switch language or show like or like step away from that binary through visual art?
I'm gonna say yes, because I feel like that's what I was trying to do during my time at CCA. I feel like I was trying to like starting with a photograph of some sort, but step out of the literally visual aspect of it. I feel like we can certainly start with a photograph, but turn it into something completely different. There was this one time when I was thinking about a project that I'm still thinking about it, but I wanted to turn photographs into music. And this was like the way I thought about it was based on colors. So choose like a tone for a color and get a photograph and translate that photograph based on the colors and the tones I selected and turn it into a song. So by doing that, I feel like it would be a completely different way to look at a photograph. Now we'll be listening to the photograph and seeing how a space can be felt with a different sense, if that makes sense.
Can I just say that that's so cool? That's awesome. As a musician, that's awesome.
So cool.
Specifically, also because like I know that we can't like hear or see certain frequencies, so that would be amazing to listen to a photograph.
Yeah, we have to make sure, like I would have to make sure that it's not like a lot of noise, I guess, since there'd be a lot of colors. So like trying to like first find the rhythm, like the visual rhythm, and then translate that into the auditory rhythm. So
crazy awesome.
Is that something similar to the Tango Brain research, or is that something completely different?
The Tango Brain research?
Uh-huh.
I'm not familiar
on
with the
music
Tango
therapy.
Brain.
Okay, I'll put it on the chat.
Yeah,
it sounded similar.
But maybe.
Does that involve dancing the tango?
No, it was a research study that shows there's I'll put the link on the chat, but there's it shows the image of where it lights up in the brain as these different participants listen to tango music, and it's specifically it's focused on music therapy and how awesome music therapy is for our mental health and for our brain. So.
Andrea, can you name an example of that kind of work, like the idea of having like the colors in photography like sound like a song?
An example of it? I mean, this idea came based on like the synesthesia that we were like talking previously. Since like really like the synesthesia is like when we have like one sensor, like sensory information, and this like automatically leads to a response of a different sense like sensation coming to you, but that's like completely involuntary. So that's where I was coming from. But a specific example of this, I'm not sure. Let me think about it and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, no problem. I was just wondering if you had an example that you could think of, but that definitely makes sense. And I'm super interested, as you probably could already tell, in like the whole idea of synesthesia. So yeah, I just love the idea of like behavior and like the way the brain works connecting with like art and colors and music and things like that. Because as Adia was saying in the beginning, or based on the presentation that Camilo put together, it's really all connected. So yeah, I think that's super interesting. Well, I guess that was kind of like a question I could ask all of you. What's your favorite piece of work that you've done?
Come on, that's like asking me to pick between my children, like, or my students for that matter.
Your favorite one today.
I think for me, my favorite. Well, that wasn't necessarily something that I made. I played a show at the Madrone Art Bar in San Francisco. Some of you may know where it is. And it was actually my first show that I played as a member of FemHouse, which is it's actually a charitable organization. It's a music label and an educational platform for people who are interested in producing music or just want to be in the music industry. I ended up reaching out to Leah or LPGOB, who is the person that runs the org. And I literally just sent out an email, telling her, I'm a DJ, I'm a music producer, I'm a photographer. I love that your label is geared towards women and, expanding this industry to women. And I would love to be a part of it in any kind of way. And I was met with the response of just like, great, what do you want to do? Do you want to play a show? Do you want to shoot a concert? Like, what is it that you want to do? We can help you out and figure something out. And it just so happened that later in that month, Leah was already scheduled to play a show in San Francisco, and she asked me if I wanted to play that concert too. And it was very empowering because it was all made by women, played by women. And so it was a very empowering environment to be a part of. And it helps you envision what having more women, non-binary, trans, and other gender expressions take up this space.
Yes to that. The today qualifier helps me a lot, Haley, because it made me realize that remember, not realize that yesterday I received, I don't know if it's gonna work because of I have the thing, but can you see it? Oh, my children's book that's about to come out, Alejandria Fights Back. I'm holding it. It's the hardcover. It's beautiful. It's illustrated by Rob Louis Trujillo. It's part of a collaboration with Rise Home Stories, which is a national narrative platform. And so there's a podcast, there's a video game, and it's all around raising awareness around housing rights and, putting information into the hands of families and centered around youth and youth leadership and activism. So it's actually not coming out until the summer, but we are having a soft book launch because it was this project was funded by a grant. And so the first phase is us giving away books to organizations and educational institutions and communities and families where, like the Mission, where I've lived for multiple decades, that are plagued with issues of gentrification and displacement. And the story centers a Central American girl. It's been my dream to write a children's book for a really long time. And, to be able to then contextualize it to make the character Central American. And she's actually Afro-Nicoya, and she leads her community in sort of this resistance of eviction and just exploitation. So I'm super, super excited. It's bilingual. It's translated by Dr. Carla España, who's an awesome educator. And that's the link if you want to pre-order. Yep. Not even shameless. Just, I'm plugging it. Yep.
Plug it, please. That's amazing. That's what we're here for. Please plug your work. Please be proud of what you're doing, because you are like breaking boundaries and you are creating that visibility for, children who need it. So thank you for that. That's amazing. I can't wait to read it. I saw that someone raised their hand in the chat. Tariq, I'm gonna unmute you, or I don't know, can you unmute yourself? Do you have that ability?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I was just going to ask Professor Letitia, will it be available on Amazon in the summer, the book?
Well, it will, but it would be so much better if you went to your local bookstore and supported a small indie business and got it from there. Or even better, you could pre-order it from the Feminist Press and support the Feminist Press, and then it'll just get mailed to you when it comes out. You could like make a future investment by ordering it now and showing that there's interest for the book. And yes, you know, no judgment. You can get it wherever you need to get it. But yeah, that is the pre-ordering way is a good way to support the project too, because then they see the immediate interest. Nice. Thank you, Haley. Thanks for your question, Tariq. It's nice to hear you.
Oh, thank you. And if you could put that link in the chat for me so I can get it, that would be helpful. Thank you.
And how long have you been working on that?
The book, it actually, over the last year, it was a unique process because it is a collaborative. So I would get like, you know, a big list of suggestions or like ideas, and then I have to take them and kind of make sense of them. It was actually a really beautiful process, though. It was really exciting to be part of. So we did it in a year, which is pretty fast, I think. But I mean, Rob is a very talented and prolific illustrator and children's book author himself, and so I'm actually more impressed that he was able to make all those paintings so quickly, the paintings that make the illustrations of the book.
Right. So the whole team went into it, and that's something, well, what I was kind of getting at was that you've been working on it during the pandemic, right? Or it's something that you started like within the time frame.
Oh yeah, girl. And you don't even know the half of it, the other things I was contending with while I did it. I mean, talk about the healing power of art. You know, put the Salvadoran and the Virgo together and you get me, and you get somebody who just can't be stopped. But also, actually, I am very grateful for that ability I have. I do have, when I am in, you know, in turmoil, or when I'm in crisis, art helps me. Not everyone can do that, so I'm grateful to have that. So yeah, we pulled it off under a lot of duress. But that's where the collaborative was helpful, right? I wasn't on my own.
It's so hard to get a team together and put, like, even with this conference, it's so hard to get all these people together and all like try to convey one idea or make something happen for a lot of people. So I have mad respect for that. It sounds like a lot of work was put into it and a lot of passion. So I'm excited for when it comes out. And I also want to ask the other panelists, have y'all been working on anything during the pandemic?
I mean, I've been in school. So basically like all my schoolwork, which is a lot, but of course it's been like online school. I'd rather have in-person school, to be honest. But yeah, I've literally just been in school.
Are you able to find time to create though for yourself with school?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, because a lot of the work we do, like I have to do now, a lot of it's like read something and then like reflect on it. So even though I don't like hand in a piece of art, whenever I am reflecting on it, for me, in order to understand what's going on, I would do something that's like beyond just the reading. So I would like try and get the information and turn it into something more hands-on for me to understand. And then once I get that, then I have to do an essay. So it's not really very artsy, but it is like the way which I process the information that I have to read, since it's like online and I don't have a teacher I can talk to. My way of like dealing with that issue was through art, basically, like, and being able to translate the research papers and all the different brain disorders that we're researching into like a art perspective, so then I can hand in my work, I guess.
That's awesome that you're still finding ways to make that happen, even if it's not, I guess, as free-spirited as your other work may have been, that you're still finding time to express yourself in that way and understand school. Because yeah, it's really hard being, I mean, I'm a student too. So, and I'm sure I mean, I think we have like almost all students in this room. So it's hard to find time to do what you're passionate about, and what makes you feel good when you're in school and like trying to focus on getting a degree. So that's definitely inspiring. Thank you for that.
Sure, and I would like, for example, a lot of the like brain disorders are like brain paths. So I would literally create like the brain and start doing like colors of where the path is going and what's going in the brain and why is that happening. So that's how I've been using art at the moment. And then I would like I'll be done this year with school. So then I'm sure like I would have more time to do more art than related with like the mental health side of it.
That sounds like a really cool print as well. I'd like to see that if you start putting them out there.
Yeah, I mean, I usually just like it's like a sketch kind of thing, and it has a bunch of colors and kind like that kind of stuff. But I can show you the next one I do, I guess.
Thank you, thank you. What about you, Yula and Yeye? Have y'all been creating during the pandemic?
Yes and no. Definitely have, the program that I use is called Ableton to make music. And so definitely have lots of projects that I started but haven't finished. It's really hard to finish a song. And to not get lost into like listening and experimenting with cool sounds and things like that. But in terms of the pandemic, I think it's been hard for everyone, and I'm sure everybody had their own like personal struggle during the past year. And for me, I was also in a place where I needed to do a lot of healing. And so like when you're in a place where you need a lot of healing, I guess like sometimes being creative and working on your art is not really the best moment to do that. You just don't feel like you can put your best out there. But definitely, I think one of the main skills to develop to be a good producer, a good DJ, is to first of all be a good listener. And so I actually took when I was at San Francisco State, I took a history of electronic music class, and one of the exercises that our professor would make us do is every class each student would get to pick a song, any song that they liked, and we would listen to it from start to finish and then dissect the song. Like what were the sounds that we could listen to it, like did you notice this sound at this moment of the song? And so that's something that it's an exercise that I always try to do whenever I listen to a new music or a new artist or anything like that. I'm always trying to like train my ear to listen to the things that are kind of more subtle or in the background and try to draw inspiration from that too.
Keeping the brain fresh. Yeah, that's definitely something super important too, because I mean, like, you don't always have to be creating for other people and putting work out there. Sometimes it's good to just work on yourself and like have that as a mode of expression or a mode of understanding the world and yourself. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I share a little bit of what everyone shared as well. I collaboratively with some folks from Balboa High School, we noticed that youth are not attending online school, immigrant youth, and so we did everything that was in the book to try to engage them, and nothing was working. And similar to Andrea, when I have a problem, when I'm having difficulty maybe getting through, a situation that a client is bringing up for, during therapeutic sessions, I think of them as music, and I think, okay, dissonance, and I think of, like I think of it as a piece of music to be able to solve and get through, or just like stay there and keep processing it, right? And so we started this series called Noches, and the first Noches we had was Noches de Serenata, and we invited Diana Gameros to begin to create these evenings where we would just share like a time, for Latinos is like music and food, right? Like family, friends, music and food. That's like who we are, and so like if there's no music, if there's no food, it's like, well, there's not a party, right? So we can't have food with our people, but we can have music. So we started these noches. I'll put it on the chat. And the idea was to be able to, since youth are not going to schools, then the families are not getting resources, because that's where mostly the families are able to get resources. So what we decided is we're gonna have these noches where we're gonna talk about different things and different resources, through kind of like a círculo idea, right? Where we're just chatting with a special guest. And the first guest we had was Diana Gamero. The second noche series we had is called Noches de Chamba, where we talked about like how do youth engage in, or where to start, right? Like as an immigrant, undocumented or documented, to be able to have a job. Which is what's mostly on their minds, because they take on sort of this role of like really wanting to support their families. And so our guest for that series was one of the mothers actually that was part of our agency at some point. And it was really beautiful, and just really using music in that way, music as a way to bring in resources to our community. I've also done workshops for different organizations where it's just using music tools to be able to talk about mental health, to be able to have like practical tools on how to use music to help us self-regulate, to help us just be able to connect more with our bodies. And of course, I would say that, to answer your previous question, my favorite works of art have been sort of what's being created in the therapeutic, session that is so intimate with that other person. And also what my friend calls my love letters to God, that are never recorded, never written down. I don't remember what I sang or what I played, but it's in those very intimate moments where it's just me and my creator and my wounded soul, and pieces of art that I will not get to share with you, because it's the intimacy of my clients, of my youth, that they did in those moments, that they use art to be able to heal, right? And they chose art over medication, right? Which in this, is when you're talking about severe sort of mental health issues, is a scary decision. But they committed to it, and through art, those pieces of work that the world probably will never see, but that I get to accompany. And I think that that's just super powerful for me at this moment. Oh, and I sing at my church. I created a ministry called Creatives, so that we can understand worship not just in this idea of contemplative Christian, songs, but that we can really understand worship as every single part of our body is the worshiping. So I'm leading this ministry called Creatives Ministry, and kind of really redefining what worship means.
Breaking more boundaries. And I also want to know, I love the sparkle that was in all of your eyes when you were talking about your work. I saw in like each of you, like I could tell that y'all were really excited, and yeah. So thank you for sharing that. I also, well, to change gears a little bit, y'all already kind of touched on this in your answers, but this is a question that I think all four of you can answer. But what do you feel is the biggest challenge that either personally or someone who is using the same medium as you will face? I'm not sure if someone was trying to speak or if they just accidentally.
Yeah, sorry. Can you repeat that question, please?
Yeah. So what do you feel is the biggest challenge that either personally or someone who is using the same medium as you will face?
I'll just quickly say, I don't know what everyone will face, but I'll just, talk from my personal experience. I am a biggest critic. And for many years, when I would just kind of put myself out there and just, I do the thing, and I would just like, I'd never care. Now I look back and I'm like, oh my God, what was I doing? Like, when I went into this introspective mode, I really started like over analyzing my work and over analyzing what I did versus when I would just go for it. Back in the day, I was just like, you see some of my videos, like, what is she doing? Where I would just like, I didn't care. I didn't care. No singing classes, no I had no idea how to play music or anything, and I still did it, and I went for it, and I was there was no one would stop me, right? But the moment that I started going in and really beginning to like dig into myself and understand myself in a different way, somehow like this self-critic just kind of went up. And so I would say, like, for me, and from what I hear from other compañeros, is that the obstacle sometimes ends up being ourselves, and this idea of that our work is somehow has to always be performed, right? Like the reason why I left performing was because it's like, can it just be something that can bring people together and that can be used for collective healing, not something that you're just consuming out of me, but that we can build together, right? And so now my hope in the next works that I'm doing, that I'm working on, is that, again, collaborative, and not this idea so much of performing, look at me, look how good I move, or how good I sing, or how good whatever, but rather like, how is this building each other up, right? And building our communities up, and 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 kind of let that inner critic kind of like kick it in the butt. I don't know how to say. I try to use sayings in English, and I am terrible at them. I say the worst thing. I say, hit the nail in the I don't know how to say that, but anyway, hit it with a hammer in the butt, whatever you say, but just not think about it too much, and do it, and not care, about, I remember a producer told me, it's like, you have to get an artistic name, and you have to get a look. If you don't have a look, people won't know what you're supposed to look like. And I was like, but what if today I wanna, like, shave my head, and tomorrow I wanna have it long? It's like, no, you have to keep it the same way the whole time, because I need to be able to know exactly. It's like, I can't fit into that. And if you can't fit into that, then you create your own thing. And yeah, sorry, I start preaching, so I'll stop.
No, I love it. I just have to say, I have the same thing with sayings. I think it's about being bilingual. I can never say dichos in English or Spanish, so I feel you on that.
I'm not sure if any of the other panelists wanted to answer that question as well in terms of challenges. And I have one more question after this one. So I just wanted to do a time check as well, since it's getting a little closer to 4.
Yeah, maybe we could move on to that last question. We have some time to talk with the audience. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Eula.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just suggesting, sorry, getting a little professorial, but I was thinking that maybe we could move on to the next question, or after Eula shares, and that way there's some time to exchange with the audience. I have class at 4, so I need to go soon, and would love to just hear.
Sure, if anyone from any of the participants want to jump in, you can feel free to unmute, turn on your camera, whatever you're most comfortable with, and ask.
I wonder if we could address Ilsov's question in the beginning of the panel, which I thought it was a beautiful, wonderful question. And there's a mental health specialist here and a neuroscientist in the room, so maybe I wonder, like, I mean, not to put you in the spot, Andrea, but I'm curious if maybe, yeah, if we could like talk about what she shared. Camilo, I don't know if you have it, but I remember she had a question about the sort of the reason why neuroscience is being thrown around so much when it's talked about mental health.
Are you talking about I don't really understand mental health in neuroscience terms? Yeah, I was looking at that, and I feel like basically the neuroscience So like I would see mental health and neuroscience together in the way that neuroscience would explain the mental health. So it would help us understand what it is in order so we can know what to do. So that's how I would see it. So if, I don't know, we know that, for example, someone that has bipolar disorder, specifically from the brain, it's a deficit of a chemical, then we know how to address it and know what to do from a medical point of view. But also I feel like that will also be applied from an artistic point of view. So if we know what's wrong, if we know what are their difficulties from a brain perspective, then we know what would be the best and most efficient treatment in order to address those difficulties, I guess.
And from sort of, you know, the little bit that I've been able to kind of learn around it is that the hope is also to kind of destigmatize that we live in a very in society, not just here but even in Latin America too, just that mental health is such a taboo. And so, you know, when we don't know something, we're scared of it and we judge it, right? And so the way that I understand neuroscience is that this idea of being able to name it and to say it's like destigmatize it in the way that it's what is something is there's a biological functioning that's happening. And so hopefully I don't know if it'll change people's mind, but it can help kind of decrease this stigma around now you hear people say like mental health is like diabetes, you know, like you can't just wish diabetes to go away. And so kind of neuroscience helps supports like the explaining, like Andrea said.
Yeah, I feel like when we know something and when we know like the reason behind some things, I do feel like it changed people's minds. So like I've always had a fight with me and the world in that sense of what you're saying, that people see mental health as something bad and something that could be changed, I guess. Like people with autism, most people think that they're just dumb or that they are not capable of some things, which it's not true. Or like people that suffer from addiction, they believe like, oh, you can just stop. It's like it's not that easy. But if we're like from the neuroscience point of view, we explain why it's not that easy, we explain things, I do believe that people will be more lenient and know that, oh, okay, there's a reason why, and like don't stigmatize it as much as they do now. Like I do agree that explaining things do help like change people's minds.
I'm going to go ahead and ask my one final question before everyone leaves. But for the four panelists, what's, I guess, one last piece of advice that you would want other creators to know?
I think my best advice, and I'm assuming that most of the people here are still students, definitely take advantage of your student environment, you know, like whatever your interest may be, you know, if it's art, you know, there's the art gallery, if it's music, there's the depot. Just throw yourself out there and don't be afraid of rejection, I guess, you know, like you're always going to hear a no. There's always going to be people who are not even going to listen to what you have to say. But what I always tell myself is that there's always going to be one yes. There's always going to be at least one person who's going to be willing to believe in whatever, believe or give you a chance, give you an opportunity. And so if you feel like it's, you know, if it's your calling, if it's something that you really want to do, like it was for me, when I figured out that I wanted to like shoot concert photography, you know, I emailed every possible publication in the world and literally just one got back to me, and that was it was the one chance that I needed to be able to start shooting concerts and meeting more people and, you know, developing my career in that way. So, you know, and the people that are around you, the people in your classes, your professors, like those are your community right now, and they can point you to places where you never thought you might end up. So just throw yourself out there. Don't be afraid of people telling you no, because those people will always be out there, but always be sure that there will be at least one person that will believe in you and give you a chance.
I would say don't hesitate really to just try. And if you fail, don't like let yourself down. By failing is that we learn. By failing is that we really like we have to fall down in order to step back up. So I would say just keep trying. And if something doesn't work, that's fine. Try a different way. There's not only one way to reach one outcome, there's many ways. So just keep trying. Ask for help. It's not like, don't feel like you can't ask for help. Some people feel like, oh, if I ask for help, that means I don't know how to do something. Like, don't think that way. Collaborate with people, share ideas. 2, 3, 4 brains are better than one. So just let yourself like grow and be whoever you want to be.
Go. It's okay.
I would really encourage to like not see if art is your thing, if you are a creative. So I mentioned God, right? Like I believe in God, and I believe that God's the creator, right? So if my father is a creator, my father, my mother is a creator, then I'm a creator by default. I am a creative being. So creativity is in my hobby, is in the thing I do, is who I am. And so like I think that helps me see everything I do as in a creative lens. I think someone mentioned the difficulty of doing art and studying, and I would encourage to break that boundary, to see your studying as as the creative being that you are, if that is who you are, if that's how you identify as a creative being. Because then it's not when you have time, and I'm telling you, I'm giving you the advice I give myself because I cannot do it still, but you know, it's not when I have time to do my thing, is that I am all of that thing. I am a creative being. So no matter what I am, what I'm doing here is creative. When I'm cooking, when I cook, you know, after I stop doing the, you know, super planned recipes, I am creating in the kitchen. I put this thing and this thing and this thing, you know, like when I wear what I wear, how I dress, like everything is about expressing who I am as a creative being. And then it doesn't have to be then, oh, when do I have time to be creative, but rather, damn, like every moment I can be creative. And so I think that would be my advice.
Yeah, I think we're the same person. I haven't seen you in
That's why I know we used to perform in the same places. My sister was like, oh my gosh, can you be friends with her because she's amazing? I was like, I am, like I know her for a long time now.
But yes, it's making me, and you mentioning Diana también, who I've done a lot of work with too, it just makes me feel like I miss everybody, you know. But what you said about the cooking and the clothing really resonates for me. You know, over the break, I wasn't really writing, but I was cooking my ass off, and I was like, I'm being creative. I'm feeding my children good food, and that's really about like all our ways of creativity. Like this panel is so great. All the ways that you mix things is so cool. And you know, our mothers and our grandmothers and our tias, you know, they all express themselves too, you know, through the many things that they did, especially with the, you know, sewing and embroidery and just quilt making or whatever it was. It doesn't have to be a defined art, but you know, I could tell you a million things, but I think I would rather close with an inspirational piece from Zora Neale Hurston's How It Feels to Be Colored Me. At certain times, I have no race. I am me,
When I set my hat at a certain angle and saunter down 7th Avenue, Harlem City, feeling as snooty as the lions in front of the 42nd Street Library, for instance. So far as my feelings are concerned, Peggy Hopkins Joyce on the Buell Mish with her gorgeous raiment, stately carriage, knees knocking together in a most aristocratic manner, has nothing on me. The cosmic Zora emerges. I belong to no race nor time. I am the eternal feminine with its strings of beads. Sometimes I feel discriminated against, but it does not make me angry. It merely astonishes me. How can any deny themselves the pleasure of my company? It's beyond me. So basically just shine and know your beauty and, just, she said it so beautifully, the cosmic. So find the cosmic Zora, find the cosmic Tariq, the cosmic Eula, the cosmic Noemi, the cosmic Belen. Find that and don't let anyone take that from you.
Hell yes. Hell yes.
Well said, Eula. My heart is so full. Thank you so much.
Yeah, since we were sharing a little piece, I wanted to share a little piece with you too. One of the questions Camilo had sent me was about how has identity sort of impacted or informed my work. And I think part of the advice piece too is, again, going back to these intersectionalities and not just focusing on the one thing or the one story that people say about you or that you think about yourself. So I want to just give this little piece to you all. Querida hermana y hermano, me quito la bandera, no creo en paz armada, líderes ni sus guerras. Creo gente, tierra, conflicto, unifiquemos primero nuestra vida para que así todos nos sanemos. No soy americana, china o de Angola, no soy venezolana, de Austria o de Mongolia, no soy de Malasia, española o Indonesia, argentina, holandesa ni tampoco francesa, no soy de Nigeria, Etiopía o colombiana, guatemexicana, paraguaya o boliviana, no soy de marquesa ni ecuatoriana, de la isla Tahití o de Botswana. Soy de los mares bañados en llanto, del sustento diariamente nutrido por tanto. Una bandera me llama, amor pa' mí, pa' usted y pa' la Pachamama. So in summary, I am not a flag. I am from the oceans that have been worked by all of our people and all of our ancestors, and that the healing comes from healing myself and healing each other and loving our earth.
Thank you so much for all of your time and your contributions to the conversation. This has been an amazing 2 hours. So thank you so much. And especially to our participants, thank you so much for your time.
Can the panelists put like info in the chat, like a link to the website or just how we can kind of stay in touch or,
Yes, please do, please.
Yes,
Thank you so much to everyone. Sorry, Camilo, I just wanted to thank the amazing women that were part of the panel. It was, and I really appreciate folks taking time out of the day to come and listen to our stories. So thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing, Profe. So thank you so much, all of you, for being here. It was just so amazing to hear about all your stories and, all the different things you're doing in the world and how that connects back to your artistic identities. Happy Women's History Month. And, just be tuned because we're going to do a lot more events and hopefully the Art Gallery and the Women's Center will collaborate again. I think this was really successful and thank you all for being here.
Thank you guys so much. It was my honor to be on this amazing panel with all of you today. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.